Hey, Hal here. Just wanted to tell you we're excited about our partnership with Minus 33. Minus 33 specializes in merino wool base layers for outdoor enthusiasts, from tops and bottoms to hats, socks, gloves. And our gear is going to keep you warm and comfortable no matter what adventure you're on, especially those big woods ones. We're a fifth-generation family, owned and operated, a New Hampshire woolen textile manufacturer. They have over 106 years of woolen expertise, and they started manufacturing woolen socks, the Mountain Heritage ones, in New Hampshire in 2018, with the idea that a quality product, affordable pricing, and can be worn and loved from season to season, no matter what your experience level or skill is, so no one should feel uncomfortable or ill-prepared in the outdoor community. Having a reliable gear is one of the first steps towards a lifetime of passion or whatever activity it is. And my caveat to that is you got to wear your woolies. Cotton is death.
This is the Big Woods Bucks podcast. Come explore the big woods and timber in North America with your host, Maine master guide and deer tracking expert Hal Blood. Listen to Hal and co-hosts Lee Libby and Joe Cruzy as they unlock the secrets of big woods whitetails. Each episode will provide valuable insights in the tried and true system Hal has used for the last 40 years to scout, locate, and hunt mature big woods bucks. Listen and laugh as the crew discusses Hal's legendary adventures and learn how to apply a lifetime's worth of lessons from the big woods to your own hunting and outdoor adventures.
All right, everybody, I guess we're ready to go. They're telling me we are anyway. I don't know when this podcast will come out, but it'll be on YouTube sooner or later. So welcome to the Big Woods Bucks podcast. I'm your host, Hal Blood. Sitting here with me is my co-host, Joe Cruzy.
Hello.
And our special guest on this episode is the ADK Trackers. What's that short for?
Well, ADK Trackers is just a thing that Steve had created a long time ago on Facebook, and we just like to track big bucks in the Adirondacks.
All right, so we got Joe DiNitto, and the grandfather of the ADK Trackers, Jimmy Massett, and the junior one is Steve Grabowski.
First time I've been called junior in a while.
Yeah, junior member. He started out as the dragger, but now he's the big buck killer.
Yeah, he certainly was last year, that's for sure. I ended up being the dragger. He ended up shooting the big buck, and it was quite a buck.
And I ended up talking about it.
Yeah. Was it bigger than any of your bucks, Jim?
Yes, it is.
It is?
The biggest one I had was 152.6, and his is just under 160?
Gross 161 something.
So how do you feel about that, Jim?
I'm happy for him.
Yeah, got to be, right?
Yeah.
I'd be happy if Joe got one, too.
Yeah. You know what? Joe would, too.
Yeah.
Let's wait a few
That
years,
worked out
though.
just fine. That was a heck of a buck, heck of a day. When Steve sent me a little inReach message that I'd heard him shoot, and then I got the message, and it was, I can't say all the words he was saying, but I knew he was pretty excited. And when I got over there, I reached down and I picked up that buck by the horns, and I studied it for a minute or two, and I looked up at Steve. I said, Steve, you know what's wrong with this buck? He says, what? I said, nothing. It's high, it's wide, it's heavy, it's got it all. So if you were to draw a picture of the 10-pointer you wanted to shoot next year, myself at least, I wouldn't even draw it that big. That was a little unattainable. It's that nice a buck. He shot a heck of a buck last year. You got to stop down in the booth. We got the rack there. It's impressive, especially out of the Adirondacks. It'd be a great buck anywhere, but out of the Adirondacks, that's special.
But the bad thing that Joe said, the only bad thing he said about it was that Joe didn't get it.
No, I never said that. I never, ever said that. I mean, I felt it right here, but I never said it. But we want to, all three of us, I'm talking for all three of us, we want to thank you guys for having us up on here. This is quite a deal. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, great to have you. Yeah, that's what we've been trying to do, is get some of the hunters from different places on and share their adventures. And, yeah, it's all about our deer hunting and chasing them around, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
We like to venture up in Maine once in a while. I always say if there's snow in Maine and it's not in New York, I'll go to Maine, or if I'm tagged out in New York, I'll go up to Maine. Big country in both places, lots of fun.
Yeah.
Big bucks up in Maine.
Hal, you know, one of the big things that I always thought about this type of thing that we're doing here, I mean, we're in the limelight. There's so many of you fellows out there that track just as well as we do, just as much. You're just not as loudmouth as we are, that's all.
Yeah,
that's
Jim
right.
never needed a microphone before.
Yeah.
When he was younger, everybody here.
What I found from talking to a lot of people over the years is just some people that, whether they're shy or they just don't want to reveal any information, there's a lot of great deer hunters and trackers that they keep to themselves. That's it, and that's fine if that's what they want to be. But we like to run our mouths and tell stories, so.
Yeah, and
keep
we're
doing
here
it.
as the ADK Trackers, and we come out to the shows, but we're not really promoting anything. We don't have a brand that we're trying to push out or whatnot. We did write a book. We sell it down there. It's an entertainment book. It's kind of a storytelling book. It's not a how-to book, but we like to come out because of you guys. My voice will be completely gone by Sunday. It's just because I like shooting the breeze about this. And as you guys know, as life gets so busy, you don't get the time to have that talk. If I ran into half of you guys somewhere out in the normal area, we talk for 20 minutes, but you got to go to work, or I got to go to work, or we got to leave. You come here, you can shoot the breeze for an hour, hear the stories. It's part of the fun, you know?
Yep.
That's what we enjoy about it. So don't be scared to stop over to our booth and shoot the breeze, you know?
So Jim, I'm curious, all the years you've been tracking in the Adirondacks, has it changed a lot over the years, or is it, because in Maine it's a lot different, obviously, because we have all the harvesting, whereas the Adirondack, a lot of it.
Well, probably the biggest difference is any of you people that hunted in New York or live in New York, there's a Article 14 in the Constitution of the state that no timber will be cut out of the Adirondack Park unless it's private land. And it's made such a big difference for the deer hunting. When I was younger and growing up in the 40s and 50s, there was a lot of logging that went on because there was a lot of private parcels around there then. And I think any of you people that do any type of deer hunting, especially you fellas that do tracking, whenever you've got a timber area that's been cut for like 2 or 3 or 4 years right now, it's the best hunting because deer have the best food and they have the best chance to make it through the winter. So things have changed a lot since then. The areas that we hunted now, the state has bought them all up. Naturally, there's deer in there and there's some nice bucks in there, but it's not like it used to be. Just for an example, during the 60s, the early 60s and right to actually 1970, I would hunt the whole season. I would see 100 deer for the season, but I hunted 1 week and then every weekend. I would see 14 or 15 bucks during that season. Now I go up, of course I don't travel like I used to, but like I'll say 10 years ago, we'd hunt in those particular areas, the same areas we hunted before, and we'd come back to camp at night and say, oh, who saw the deer today? And a lot of times there would nobody even see a deer during the day. Now you compare that with 20 years before when all the logging went on, and we'd come back and the guy would see 5 deer, 7 deer, I'd jump a buck over here, over there. It's nowhere near the same as it used to be.
Yeah, I think we went the opposite of you guys. You guys got overlogged. We're now underlogged. You know, our timbers are all getting to be mature with no logging unless, like Jim had mentioned, it's private land. Then it's getting logged, and that's not much. Our park is mostly state-owned, so there's no logging going on. And you guys, well, they're logging up there.
A little bit too much on our end sometimes.
Yeah, well, the thing of that is, and we've been through spells in northern Maine. I mean, the logging up there, they went overboard, so they cut a lot of deer yards, and that's so we don't have more deer because of that. You know, we have less deer. They historically in northern Maine there was 20 deer, 15 to 20 per square mile, and nobody can even believe that now because you know you go up there now and it's not that much different than the Adirondacks. I mean, I go days without seeing a deer sometimes and stuff, but they cut the wintering areas that they need, and that's what controls our population now. So, but the part about that is it's more of a challenge, right? I like it because it's more challenging than hunting a place where there's all kinds of deer and you see all kinds of deer, you know. And that's the fun of it, I think.
How we hunt, sometimes too many deer is a problem too. It's nice
Oh, yeah.
to have not a lot
It
of
is.
deer.
I'd rather have one good buck in the whole area. I don't care if I see another track all day. It's easy.
Yeah, in the Adirondacks, and I know a lot of you guys shoot over there to hunt, and I think it's true in Maine too. The still hunting in those big woods is kind of going to the wayside as far as guys can still do it if you don't have snow. But the chances are obviously a lot lower now that we're in lower deer populations. I think that's why tracking has become so popular. You can go find a track and get close to that buck by the end of the day. Still hunting, they got so much room and so few deer. It's a tough game.
The one
Tough,
thing
tough.
I noticed the difference in hunting in Maine, and I only hunted there once or twice, but anyway, the big difference I noticed was you couldn't go a half a mile without running into an old Tarvia road, an old blacktop road, an old gravel road. You get in the Adirondacks and you could go for 15 or 20 miles and never see a track of a vehicle that had been in there or anything. That forever wild thing has really made a big difference there as far as keeping it wild, and that's what it is. I mean, you can go 15 miles in one direction and never run across a trail or a road. And it's quite different than it is hunting in Maine.
So you answered my question. I was going to ask if you had hunted in Maine and how much. And was that years ago that you hunted up there, or was that more recent?
Joe, do you remember when we went there? A whole bunch of us went there.
Yeah, I think it was back in '94.
Is
So
that,
we're
is
talking
that long ago?
30 years
Yeah,
ago.
Yeah. See, it's funny. What seems like a few years ago to me is probably 20 or 30 years ago. That's what happens when you get old. And just a side note, we used to have a thing set up like this when we did the show in Vermont. And one of the questions that came up from you folks out there was, what do you do that's different that makes you a better hunter? Well, it come all the way along, and guys were saying this or that or anything, and it got to me. Shane Benoit was sitting right next to me, and I said, well, the difference that makes a difference to me is I pray a lot. And Shane, when he picks up the phone, he says, yeah, if I was old as you, I'd pray a lot too.
So you said it was Russell Pond area?
Yeah, we hunted above the Golden Road. I think that's in the middle part of the state or so on the upper end, or middle of the Golden Road, I mean, in the upper. I believe that was years and years ago.
Yeah, I am familiar. There must have been good in that area back then. How'd you guys do up there?
I don't know. I killed a buck. I know that.
Yeah, you did. I didn't. I know
Yeah.
we had a couple of days of snow, and as Jim had mentioned, and it was an odd story, I picked up a really nice buck track, but I was hunting with my dad and another gentleman, and they said, well, let's just kind of still hunt through here and whatnot. I said, but Dad, I got this big buck track. I want to take this buck. And my dad said, well, do this, and then you can come back to it. You don't ever want to do that in Maine. Because we did that, and I went up through to my dad, and then we said, well, he said, let's just go on the other side of the road down there, and I'll swing around this way and whatnot. If nothing happens, he goes, then you can go on the track. Well, when I went on that other side of the road with my dad and I went down, I was behind where that deer had come from, and there was a guy's track on it. Now, I knew I was ahead of him earlier in the day, and this guy had come along. Of course, when my dad finally gave me the green light, I ran back to where I was, and the guy had crossed, and he'd went on the buck. So I got cut off by waiting. In the Adirondacks, that doesn't happen. You never get cut off in the Adirondacks. There's just too much ground, not enough accessibility. Nobody's going to cut you off. But to end that story, that evening, I saw the guy's truck. So that evening, I was coming up one of the narrow roads, and sure enough, here comes that guy. So I pulled off and talked to him. I said, did you get that buck? He said, yeah, I got him. I said, how was he? He said, oh, he's a real nice 8-pointer. He'll probably go 220. And I thought, oh, jeez, I should have. I said, do you have him somewhere, because he was in his truck. He said, well, he's 300 yards down in. He says, I'm going to need help tomorrow to get him out. I said, well, I'll help you if you don't want. I wanted to see the buck. And while we were walking down there, he finished telling me the story. He jumped the buck 5 times. And when he come up on it in the 5th time, he saw a bunch of brush moving in front of him. He said, well, that buck's rubbing a tree. When he kind of rushed up there, 2 bucks were fighting. So he wasn't even sure he shot the buck that he tracked in there. But I'm thinking, I got cut off, and the guy goes up and sees 2 bucks, and he shot one of them. I thought, oh, boy, this Maine is a little different.
So we had this discussion recently about none of us had ever come up on bucks fighting like that. Have you guys ever done that?
We've seen the short after fight. I've never actually come up on them while they were fighting. Have you, Jim or Steve?
Yes, I did. I come up, and in fact, I say they were fighting. The deer do a lot of sparring, especially younger deer. They get and clack their horns a few times and then back up. Anyways, I was up in this particular part, and there was 2 bucks fighting. I could hear them. I got close to them, and they kept right on fighting like nothing was happening. And while they were fighting, it was just 2 4-pointers. While they were fighting, all of a sudden a bigger buck comes in, and it was a nice one, so I shot that one. At any rate, every once in a while you'll see them, but I don't know if
That's a pretty good story, because
Just
the
matter of
idea
fact,
is, that everyone thinks about if you hear two bucks fighting, they're going to be distracted. You can get in there and then take your pick of which one you want, and you didn't even pick those two. You got another one.
Yeah.
I was actually staying at Hal's house, and remember the time that you and Jason came along, and I was stopped looking at that track, and I picked that buck up on the top side of that road. I ended up tracking that buck through that log, and I jumped him out. He ran from me. He ran by another buck, and they got in a fight. The other buck chased him. He jumped the other buck up, and he chased him. And I tracked him a little further, and they split. So I'm just sitting there looking because you could see pretty good. Next thing you know, I see a deer moving right in the middle where the two split. I go, there's one of them, and if he fought, the other one was a big one. So if they fought, I'll shoot either one of them if he's comparable. And this deer works its way to me, and I'm standing right where they were fighting. And all of a sudden, I see this deer, and it's a spike horn. I'm like, I thought I was going to get one of these two big bucks, and it's a spike horn. He must have heard the commotion or something and walked right back to him. I never saw either of the two bucks after. I tracked him. You actually messaged me, are you coming home tonight or what? So, coming out.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen the aftermath a lot, but I've never, I've been in the woods, the whole season guiding for 30-something years, and I've never heard them fighting. And, but I've seen a lot of the aftermath where stuff is tore up and broken off. Actually, that first one I shot over in the Adirondacks, I named him the ADK fighter, but I was tracking him, and he came in on another buck that was with a doe, and they fought. And I don't know if the one I started on was the one, but I must have just missed that by 20 minutes, because I shot that buck probably 300 yards from where they were fighting. I just stayed on the one that took the doe. I figured he's the winner. He's the better one. And he probably was the heavier one, but he didn't have the rack. He was that 6-pointer. But I don't know what he weighed. I guessed 180. He was a heavy deer for there and had a good track. But he just didn't have the rack to match. But so it's amazing. And it doesn't happen a lot. They usually have most of that fighting taken care of ahead of time. Usually, I believe when you see those fights in the woods where it was two bucks that were kind of overlapping each other's territories a little bit, because them big ones get out of their territory when they get searching. If there's nothing going on, they just keep going and
they fight a lot. They fight a lot at night too. That's one of the reasons why you don't see them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar story that I picked up a big buck track, and he was going down into this open hardwood. And as I was coming up over on a ridge and heading down the other side, the big buck track went across the track I was on with a doe. And I thought to myself, well, he went down in there, picked up a doe, and came around. I thought it was the same buck, so I started to follow him. And I looked over, 60 yards from me. I was in the open hardwoods below me, and it was all tore up. So I said, well, he was down there. They were down there feeding on the beech nuts. They had the whole place tore up, and as I got closer, I seen dirt and leaves all on top, just spread all over. And I said, what had happened, this buck that I was on come over to that buck and doe. And now they had a big fight. And the fight was the area of this tent, plus. And in a couple of spots, it was kind of strange. I never seen this before or after, but there was two spots where the blood was, as big around as you can make your hands, in two spots. And I said, I know they're only superficial wounds. They're actually cutting each other's necks up. But why is it right here in this one spot toward the end of the fight is what I presumed. And I thought they're locked up, or they're so exhausted they're standing there, because it dripped enough in one spot. It just seemed odd. Then they got next to a big downfall log, and they went back and forth. It was right in the dirt. And I thought, they can't unlock. They got to be, this is odd that they would make a dirt path that hard. The other side of the log, the two tracks went running off. So obviously they got unlocked and ran off. I picked what I thought was the buck I brought in. He kind of had a little chip on one of his back foot. So I said, well, I'm going to stick with the one and I swung around, and 500 yards later, I shot that buck. And he's actually in my seminar that I'm going to do later today. I think it's at noon. But after I killed it and everything settled down, and the buck weighed 193 pounds on November 24th. I only remember those, 24, 93. But anyway, he weighed 193 pounds. He scored 134. And as I was taking pictures and whatnot, I thought to myself, I shot the loser buck because the doe wasn't there. The winner took the doe. And this was a heck of a buck. I mean, I wasn't disappointed at all. The other one might not have had the rack. He might even weighed more or less. I don't know.
That's
but
like a 220-pounder in Maine equivalent that time of year.
Yeah, this was after the rut. Anyway, for the Adirondacks, I mean, he was probably my biggest. I've shot him over 200. I shot one over 200 in New York and whatnot, but this was the biggest framed Adirondack buck I think I've killed to date. I mean, it was a dandy buck. But it just goes to show you when you try this tracking thing, you can see all kinds of stuff. It's just more fun, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But it is a really rare thing, like you pointed out, though, to actually come on to one of those fights. I've probably seen 3 in my lifetime, 3 or 4, and that's it. And I've never seen him fight. I've never watched him fight.
Yeah, I've had several hunters at the lodge before that they were with other guides and they were setters, you know, and heard it. And one of them shot a beauty of an 11-pointer one year. This guide put him out on his post, and there was him and his buddy, and the guide set him out, and he said he was sitting there, hadn't been there very long, and he could hear 2 bucks fighting up the ridge above him. And like I'm thinking, and he never got up and headed up there. He just sat where he was, and luckily one of them come walking down to him, and he shot it. It was a beauty. Yeah.
We got another buddy that also does the ADK Trackers with us, Dave Williams, and he had a story where 2 bucks were fighting, and he just went over and kind of took on an escape route. And I'm not sure I'm getting the details right. If Dave was here, he'd tell it better. But they never showed up. And now he regrets not just going right up there.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, just run right in because they're not paying attention.
Hell, not to change the subject, Danny, but I want to go back just a little bit to the buck in Maine. I did kill the 9-pointer there, and the reason I happened to get it was snow on the ground, and my brother and I were driving because we ended up hunting together quite a lot. And we were driving just right down the Golden Road, and this big buck stuck right on the side of the road there. And when we come by, he run back down in. So about 2 days later, we hadn't seen much, so my brother Tom and I decided to go back there where we saw this big buck. So Tom says, "Where do you want to go?" And I said, "Well, put me on the spot where we saw him." So he drives down the road about, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 miles more, and not even that probably. Anyways, and he parked. So anyhow, he walked down the road. He left his truck there. So anyways, I go back in. I start on the track there where the deer went back down there. Lo and behold, 2 days later, he's coming right back up his track. I'm probably 200 yards from the road, and this nice 9-pointer, so I plugged him. Anyways, I take the deer and I drag him back up the truck. I put him in the truck. It's like 9 o'clock in the morning. About 3:30 or 4 o'clock, my brother comes out and he said, "Gee," I said, "I've been tracking this buck all day. It turns out to be the same one I shot." He said, "I was tracking a dead buck all day long."
You was praying that morning, right? You got your reward that day. Yeah.
I must have prayed harder than my brother because I got the buck and he didn't.
Yeah. So, Jim, when are we going to get back up to Maine hunting?
Probably won't. Hell, I have a couple of health problems and I can't walk very well anymore, so I'd have to go up there and just listen to the stories now. I think that would be
you're welcome to do that. Come to the lodge. You can be a fixture there.
Yeah, you could pin me up on the wall.
Yeah.
Be my fixture. Oh, good. I appreciate that. Hell, I'd like to come up again.
Yeah, we probably got some places there you could go. You ain't got to walk very far.
Okay, good. That's what I need. Probably have to have somebody carry me. I don't know.
We'll wheel him in.
Yeah.
Set him up.
One of the deer carts. Yeah. Tie a tag on my ear. I'll be all set.
Yeah. How old are you now?
86.
86.
Going on 102.
Yeah. You got any aches and pains?
A lot of them.
Yeah.
A lot of people say it's because I carried too many deer, but I don't think so. That's probably why I'm alive today. I don't know.
Yeah. And, we talk, and there's some pictures about Jim carrying deer, but these guys were filming before filming was popular. And I have a little hunting party I do every year in January. And Tom, Jim's brother, had brought down some of the old 8mm film from back in the mid-'60s. Now, imagine filming back then. Today, everybody's got a camera or a phone. And we set up the old projector, put it up on the wall, and they've got him of Jim carrying these 180, 200-pound deer out, coming out right out through. I'm like, this is the real deal.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and they got rolls of that, and I'm gonna steal them before anybody else gets them.
I asked Joe. I said, "Joe, before I croak, what's one of the things you want that I have?" And he says, "I want all your 8mm films."
And there's lots of them. And then I remember seeing Tom on the same reel. he's actually on a buck track, and you can see the barrel of the gun. So I thought, okay, he did a real reenactment, and he's going to come up on the deer he just shot. He got up there. That deer was still alive, still going. I go, holy smokes, this is the real deal. And, nobody wants to finish one off, but he had to finish it off. I thought he was really, filming while this was happening.
Yeah, they got
was
places.
in the 60s.
Then they came out to the Jeep, and not to interrupt you, but they come out to the Jeep, and what was it, the first year Jeep come out with a four-wheel drive or something? I don't remember for sure, but it was in the 60s. Yeah.
I think what happened was the first part, they opened a section of the road for four-wheel drive only.
Right.
And that was how we happened to be in there, yeah.
But, to see the old vehicles and all that on film.
Yeah, you can send them out and get them all digitized onto.
And that's a good point. I probably can send them out. But then I was talking to a few people that are much more tech savvy than me, and he said, just get in a dark room, buy a real good camera, put it up on the screen, and film the screen.
Do it
Your quality
yourself.
is going to be as good as it's going to get if you send it out. And I thought that might work. Yeah. And it's not going to be that expensive. Just make sure the room's really dark.
Probably Chris could help us up with that. Chris would certainly be a guy that could help us out with that.
Chris would be, but Chris, anybody else, he'd probably do it for nothing. But I don't want to see the bill he's going to send me. That didn't,
I bet you Steve could figure it out.
Yeah, Steve will. Yeah, that price would be the same, though. I don't know.
If Joe talks about it, I'm usually the one that figures it out.
Yeah.
That's got to be the first
What's that?
tracking video. I mean, I've never heard of that before. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool that you were doing that back in the 60s.
Back in
Do you
the
remember
60s?
back in those days what motivated you? You just like, we got to
Well,
capture some of this.
Keep in mind, my father worked up in the Adirondacks there. He was a huckster. He used to carry, in the summertime, he used to carry produce up in the mountains there and end up meeting my mother there, and they ended up getting married in 1932. But anyways, my father hunted up there all the time afterwards. And in the years that he hunted there, in fact, even the first years I hunted there was no road back in there. It was just an old logging road, an old trail that they took back into these camps. And there were corduroy places where it was wet and everything. And so the only method they had to get their animals out was to carry them. So that's what they did. In fact, I remember 1947, the road was already partially in there, but they had killed a bear. And my father was in on a kill. There was 2 of them that shot it. And anyways, they decided the only way to get the thing out was to carry it. So my father was quite a bit bigger than me. He was probably 6'1", and probably weighed 190 pounds at the time. Anyways, they decided they're going to carry this barrel. They had no other way to take it, so they tied it into a pack like we do with the deer. And my father said with a little help, he got it up on his back. And he said, I stumbled along through the woods for about 100 yards. And he said, fine. I said, this damn thing is too heavy. We got back out. They took it out on a wooden sled, I think, afterwards. But they got back out, and they figured the deer weighed 300 pounds. The bear, I'm sorry, the bear.
That's a real deal. But if you do, you've seen the pictures. If you ever do try to carry a deer, and if he's 150 or so, it is easier to carry him than it is to drag him on leaves, on snow, obviously. So it's a little easier. But don't ever put the back legs on one side and the front on the other. That'll hurt your back. You got to go front to back leg, and put it on like a pack basket. Bring the head over.
Did the thought of carrying a rack right by your head ever? I mean, back then maybe it wasn't so bad, but nowadays
it's funny.
maybe.
Most of the areas that we hunted, there was very few other people that hunted there, and what people were there we knew. So we used to always do the same thing that the rest of them did. You'd carry your deer out, and that was it. So I think it was probably an idea where you didn't even think about that, didn't even bother you, because you knew everybody that was there.
Plus, if you look at the pictures of Jim didn't take the pictures himself. There's other people there too. Right. And you're making noise, you're talking,
Good point, Steve.
Most people don't go back there. I think I've seen one person ever in the woods in the Adirondacks, and it was his brother.
I remember one of the first moose that I ever packed out. It was the last trip coming out, and of course it's right in the middle of the rut, for moose. So I'm walking down the trail, and I've got the head and horns on my pack, so the antlers are sticking way up. And I'm carrying the piss sack in my hand. And I thought, what's going to happen if a bull steps out right now? Because it wouldn't be that unlikely for it to happen. So I started spinning them upside down and carrying the racks down a little bit.
Good point.
Yeah, you weren't nervous about getting shot. You were nervous about getting trampled.
Exactly.
Yeah, I could see your point there.
Yeah, if they come into a paddle you stick on your head going like that, they're definitely a rack.
Right.
Yeah. In the rut going on. I could see you'd be nervous there. I have carried a few out that I was alone, and I did throw something over the horns. So if you're nervous about it, you can do it. But You know, I remember in my younger years, I shot this small 8-pointer, and it was an uphill grade all the way out. And I tried to drag him, and I could only go 10 feet, and I was out of gas and whatnot. So I said, you know what, I'm going to tie him in a pack. I'm going to get him up on a log. I'm going to squeeze up underneath him. And sure enough, and I think I did it in 3 different rest periods, but 3 different draws. And another trick of it, if you have to do it, is find somewhere to set the deer off. Don't let him off. Just find somewhere like a stump or a down tree that you can kind of take the weight off to take the break. Because the hardest part is getting them up and getting out.
You said it. That's true, Joe. It's really the hardest thing is getting up on your feet. I had a buck I carried one time that an older friend of mine had killed, and I wasn't going to be there to help get it out with the rest of the guys. So I said, I'll go back on myself and get this deer out. So I did just what Joe said. I set the rear end up on a stump, and I was able to get in a deer and carry it out. Well, I had 2 or 3 places along there where I could rest. And finally, I'm like about 250 yards from where I'm going to leave the deer, and I could not go another step. I had to drop it. It was as flat as this here, nothing. So I dropped the deer down there, and I got my breath there, probably 15 or 20 minutes. I went to get back up, and the deer is laying on the ground, so I got to try to get into the thing and get it back over so I can stand up. It took me 15 minutes just to get rolled over onto my hands and knees. Once I got to my hands and my knees, I could get up. But so much of it, it's a mind over matter thing. I mean, you look at a deer and say, golly, I can't carry this thing. But once you try it and you just say, well, I can bear a little bit of a pain, and you end up taking it. And it's just funny because I think back about some of the ones we carried. The heaviest one I can remember my cousin shot. He shot it the first part of the season, and a deer weighed 210 pounds. We didn't find it out until we got back out and he weighed it. Anyhow, I can remember it's the only deer I remember carrying that every step I took, it felt like my knees were going to come apart. Anyways, the fellow that shot it was 5'5". God rest his soul, he just died here a couple of weeks ago, but he wanted to carry it. He said, boy, let me try it, Jim. Let me put that, I'll carry it. He put that deer on his back. He went about 50 feet. He went right over backwards. So he said he thought he could try it again. So after we carried 2 or 3 other of us that carried it, he put the thing on his back again, did the same thing. Went about 15 or 20 steps and right over backwards. I said, Al, you don't even want to try this anymore.
One thing that is kind of funny I've seen before, talking to guys, they'll say they gave up on the buck because they're worried they couldn't get it out of there where they were. And that's the most crazy thing I've ever heard, I think. But I didn't keep on the track because I didn't know if I'd be able to get it out of there. It was too far back. Worry about that later. And Joe will tell you what would you rather do. It means you got your big buck.
That's like the guy that doesn't want to go work out because he's afraid he's going to get too big.
Yeah, he's going to get too good a shape. No.
You hear it a lot. You hear that a lot.
Yeah, I always say, what else would you rather be doing in November, than getting your buck out? Yeah, go get him the next day. You're always going to have friends go get him. Don't even get that right out of your mind. You'll get him out. That's not even, call me up. I'll help you. Yeah. We'll get him out of there. You can always debone him. So many other options. You'll get him out of there. Getting him's the hard part. Getting him out of there is just, that's work, but it's good work.
Hey, Hal here. I want to talk a little bit about our partnership with OnX Hunt. I've been using it for a while now, and if anybody knows me, they know I'm not a very techie person, but the OnX app is it's a real time saver. I remember the days when we poured over topo maps everywhere we was going to go and stuff, and I don't do that quite as much anymore. Where it's really helped me is scouting, whether it's deer scouting, a moose, or even turkey hunting in the spring, which I do. It really helps out. I don't have to spend as much time running around the truck burning up the gas. I'm just basically using my OnX. Got it on my phone. Don't even carry a GPS anymore. So I just download the areas where I'm going to be hunting, whether it's up north moose hunting, and I use it mostly on the satellite imagery. I like to see the cuts and the clearings and the turkey hunting, the hidden fields and stuff. But everybody's using it now, from the game wardens to land surveyors, and just a great tool. And with our partnership with OnX, if you use a code BWB, you're going to receive 20% off on your first premium or elite memberships. And you just go to onxmaps.com/hunt. You'll be glad you did. Good luck on the trail.
As you all know, Big Woods Bucks is devoted to promoting the best equipment for tracking and still hunting the big woods. Part of that equation for success is the sights that sit on your hunting rifle. We've chosen Skinner Sights as the company to produce our custom-built BWB Tracker Series peep sight. It's constructed of solid steel, has our custom ghost ring, and was co-developed by some of the best trackers in the world. To get yours, go to bigwoodsbucks.com and click on the Optics tab.
Hey folks, Rick Labby here from Big Woods Bucks. I'm here today to tell you about our new packs. This is our new small pack, which the first time I saw it, Chris showed it to me and I said, that's the Nuna, because that's the perfect pack if I'm getting on a buck track at noon. And it'll hold the sandwich, your water, a little bit of gear. It's virgin wool, made in USA, waterproof resistant, has a liner on the inside. It's a great pack. This pack, this is our newest large pack, which when I used to carry the older pack, I always wore suspenders because it bothered my hips a little bit. So we designed one with shoulder straps, and this is a great pack. It takes the weight off your hips, puts it onto your shoulders. It's got a GPS pouch right here in the top you slide in. Same deal, it's water resistant on the inside, got that liner. It's a perfect pack. So I go to bigwoodsbucks.com, get yours today, and I'll see you on the track.
Just one of the things that I wrote in the book, and I'm sure most of you people know that, I know you guys do, the hardest thing as a tracker to do is to find that big track. After that, everything gets easier.
That's right. Yeah. For guys that are going to try this, and we talk about it in the seminars and whatnot, when it comes to those big tracks, if you're really going to be a tracker and you're really going to give this a shot and you're going to commit to that day, you've got to go find that track. So you can't come up on a nice hardwood ridge that they've been feeding on and there's 2 scrapes and a rub and slow down and start looking for deer because it's a really good spot. Well, you just became a still hunter. You've switched what you're doing. Know that. So when you come back that night and say, I couldn't find a big track, that's because you weren't really being a tracker. You were quiet. You were looking for deer. You don't have to sneak up on a track. You just got to travel. So when you see those really good spots that looks really good for deer, if you want to go ahead and hunt them and still hunt them, but now you're a still hunter. You're not a tracker. So, and I made that mistake a lot when I was younger. I never went far enough. I never went hard enough to find the track. And at the end of the day, I never found that big buck track. Well, that's because I was a still hunter. I wasn't a tracker. So when you switch that, you're going to find a lot more big tracks. You know, it just goes with the territory. You know, that's my belief anyway.
It's a great point because Hal's always harping on that because he just, and I get stuck in that a lot. You know, it's hard just to go barreling through an area when it looks so good.
Yeah,
but
well,
you have to.
You come on an area and it's got 2 scrapes and a new rub, and you see these doe tracks, and you're slowing. Boy, this is a good place to catch a buck. And now you're a still hunter. Just know that. So when you go back to camp that night, you never found a big track. That's why.
Yeah, the thing I tell people about that is they'll go in. Guy will go in the woods and he'll see it's all tore up. There's deer tracks everywhere. They've been running around. They probably think there's 20 deer in there, you know. So they got to stay there. And I've had guys come back and say, I'm going to set right up in there tomorrow. And I go, forget about that spot. That happened. It's over with. They're moved on. You're always hunting behind when you're doing that. So, and I'm not saying you can't find a good place that's got good sign and their bucks are traveling, but when you find that random area where there was some bucks and chasing does around and all that, it's over. You missed it. Keep moving. Go find where they're actually chasing. Find that spot.
And that's funny because during the 50s and 60s when we hunted, there were so many deer. If you saw a spot like that, you slowed down. So it's hard for me to pass up those spots. So I still sneak through them, and once in a while I shoot a deer, but most of the time I don't, like Hal said, because there's just not as many deer. But years ago, when we hunted, when there was a heavy deer populations, you could sneak through those areas and quite often see a deer, jump a deer, and quite often shoot a buck. So it's harder for me.
Right. Now there'll be, a buck, if he's searching for a doe, especially the beginning of the rut, or even during it when he's trying to find one, you might track him through 10 of them spots where he's chased the does all around, not right, go to the next one, chase them around. Then they might be a mile apart. So if you're back there 10 miles, you probably ain't going to see that buck.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to give off the wrong impression either. I'm not saying it doesn't work. We've all done it, and it has worked. But don't go back to the camp and say, I don't believe in this tracking thing, because you're not a tracker. You're a still hunter. And sure, you can shoot a buck still hunt. I just think the odds are better tracking. So it's not that it completely doesn't work or couldn't work, but you can't complain about not finding big tracks and be a still hunter. It doesn't work. You got to go like Hal said. That buck could be 2 miles ahead of you, and you're messing around with where he was 6 to 8 hours ago. He's gone. Go find him. Keep going. Get on his track and go.
And you got to move fast. Everybody worries about, I call it Elmer Fudding. You know, they get on a track and they got to find the wascally whitetail, and they're tiptoeing along and looking everywhere. Don't do that. Until you catch up, and I don't care if I jump them. Now I've caught up, right? What difference does it make? I've shot more bucks the second time after waiting than I ever have the first time. So I don't know if any of you watch. If you watch most of my like little hand filmed, self-filmed YouTube clips, and I just realized this like a year ago, and I was showing some to the people taking my deer clinic. It's like the common theme was my last clip is I'm sitting there eating a sandwich or something, and the next clip is, well, just shot the buck. That's what happens with me, because I just figured that out and it works, so I repeat it, you know.
Yeah, Hal, you probably should just eat the sandwich in your truck. Then you'll shoot him a lot closer. If that's the reason you're... No, yeah. I know. See, Hal takes that break and eats that sandwich, but he's in the game then. You know, he's made it to the stadium. He's in the game because he's jumped that buck. He knows how close he is. So that is a great point. I'd much rather jump the buck and not get the shot than I would never catch up to him. So if you never caught up to him, you never was in the game. You never had a chance. I
think you learned that over when you come to Maine the first couple of times, Joe. You were trying to hunt. It's a little different than the Adirondacks, right? It is. Because you come back and you go, I got this buck and he was feeding around, tiptoeing along, so you slowed right down, and you weren't nowhere near him because he just fed and kept going.
Yeah, he kept going. And I call it stopping on the highway for a quick hot dog and moving on, because a lot of them I think they're on the highway. Well, sometimes they just take a bite and keep right on going, and you got to recognize that and go. You know, but once you jump them, now you know you're in the game.
I think in the Adirondacks they do more when they feed, and I think it's because the feed is more localized. Like when they go to load up on feed, they're eating them ferns and stuff, or if there's a nut year, and they load up and then they do lay down. But the feed's the same in our woods, and them bucks just feed along when they walk. You know, they can nip something here, and like 3-4 miles later, they finally got enough in their stomach to lay down, you know.
Right.
Just a funny story I want to try to add in here, if it's all right.
Yeah, it's okay, Jim.
Okay. How many of you people read the book that Larry Benoit first put out, 1973, How to Bag the Biggest Buck in Your Life? Just put up your hand. Okay. My father bought me and my two brothers that book. So I'm reading it and I'm looking at it. And, of course, I did a lot of running in those days anyhow. So I said, man, he's running after these deer. I want to start chasing them. So 10 years in a row, I'm running after bucks like a banshee. There's one of your fellas that did the same thing that hunts with you guys. Anyways, I'm running like a crazy man through the woods. I'm jumping some of these deer 7, 8, 9 times. Some of them I got, a lot of them I didn't. Anyways, 10 years later, I get a chance to meet Larry Benoit. And I said, Larry, boy, you must really be in shape. And I said, you've done real well running after them bucks through the woods. And he says to me, Jim, I never ran after a buck in my life. Peter Miller put that in. I never did. I've been chasing them for 10 years.
Don't believe everything you read.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the buck that you killed in Maine, I think maybe it was the last one you killed there, way up north. How many years ago was that?
That was a couple of years ago. I think, I can't remember the year, maybe 3 years ago. I went up to the Allagash because that's where the snow was. We chased the snow. And we'd hunted 4 or 5 days, and that is one thing about Maine. There are some big bucks up there. Those tracks are impressive. And I happened to get on a day that it was pouring rain. Pouring to the point where you didn't want to get out of your truck. So I did stay in my truck for about an hour and 20 minutes looking for a deer crossing the road. I did not. Winch wipers were on high. Anyway, long story to come to a conclusion or speed up. I couldn't find a track, and I finally found where 2 deer had crossed the road. And when I stepped out even to look at them, I could feel the rain go right through my shoulders. That's how hard. It was a downpour. Parked the truck. I said, I'm just going to follow them in. I went in 200 yards, and I spotted a doe and a fawn. Messed with them for a little bit till they figured me out, and away they went. And I said, I'm going back to the truck. This is crazy. I mean, it was pouring. The only thing that really kept me going, it was going to go to 19 that night. So I know it's going to frost or freeze right up. Tomorrow's going to be the crunchiest frozen snow you could make. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go for a loop. Just do a loop. 2-3 hours. I'm wet already. I did not go 500 yards, and I come on some moose tracks, and right amongst the moose tracks was a big, big buck track. And I says, it doesn't get any better than this. Folks, when you can get a rain on snow, that's a killing day. Their senses are down just a little bit. There's a little advantage there. That's what I believe. Anyway, to round the story out, I tracked him for 2 hours, went through a couple of cuts, and he started feeding heavy. And I knew he was there. And folks, I want to tell you, I have never been more sure that I was going to see a deer than I was that day. I had my gun at half ready, thinking somebody's going to yell pull any second. I was ready to go. I was one step and watching, and I kept saying, you're right here. You're right here. And I believe you let them make the mistake. So I'd take a step, and I'd stand for a minute or two, survey everything, and take another step. Minute or two, survey everything. This went on for about 45 minutes. I am soaking wet, and I took that one step, and just off to my right, we lined up where he could see me. He was 16 paces from me. When he come out of his bed, he wasn't loping. He was flatlining out of there. He got scared as much, but I was ready. When he went, I swung and boom, boom, boom. I shot 3 times. I had my pump. The fastest 3 shots I've ever shot at a whitetail. The target wasn't going left or right. It was just flat and making ground. That was the fastest 3, and I think I hit him 2 out of the 3. The buck was an 11-pointer, and he weighed 221 pounds. Yep, and it was a great, great, great hunt. So just rainy days on snow, go for it. They're great, great days. You know, that was a great, great hunt. I got to add a little something to this. A few years before that, Hal had come down and was going to hunt with me out of my camp, and I happened to tag out that day. So I'm all proud as a peacock. I got a 134-inch 8-pointer hanging in the tree when Hal gets there.
Oh, in your truck.
It was in the tree, I think, when you came. Maybe it was I think I had it in the tree.
No, you had it laying in the back of the truck.
It was in the truck.
It was in the truck. So anyway, Hal shows up, and he, we're unloading his gear and whatnot, and he comes into the camp. I says, Hal, did you see my buck? He says, you mean skinny? I said, skinny? I'm thinking, what a beautiful rack buck. And he says, I think he won't go 150 pounds, Joe. I says, Hal, that buck will weigh 170 or 165, I think, all day long.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said, how much you think that weighs, Joe? And you go 165, and I go, no. Then Steve goes, I told him 155, and I go, no. And Joe goes, what do you think it weighs? I go, it might go 145.
You could see the rack over the tailgate of that truck, too, and they're talking about weight.
Beautiful. For us Adirondack guys, we want them to weigh 150 pounds and have great racks. For you Maine guys, all want the weight. Well, anyway, the buck weighed 147 pounds. So all I hear is that skinny, skinny, skinny. And I did overestimate him. But fast forward to the year I shot the 221-pounder. I think yours weighed 205 or something. I says, well, now you got skinny.
Yeah, that's right.
So I was happy to get one bigger than Hal that year.
I looked in the back of the truck. I go, that thing looks I had to look at the rack. I said, did he put some horns on there and playing me or something? To me, it looked like a spike horn laying in there, the body, with a big rack on it.
Because he doesn't look at the rack at all. It's all about the body.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, enough about skinny. But hey, why do I want to carry all that out? I just want the rack.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just how you're brought up. I know that in Maine you got a chance for those 200-pounders, and it is a great thrill to shoot them. Those big boys.
Yeah, a lot of people. I've said it many a times. People from Maine will say to me, "I've never shot a 200-pound buck. I really want to shoot a 200-pound buck." I said, "Well, where you hunting?" They go, "I hunt down around Bangor, someplace in more southern Maine." I go, "You're probably not going to." I said, if you want a 200-pounder, you got to hunt where they are, Because even in southern Maine, it's a different deer than southern Maine's the same deer as you have out there, like the Virginia whitetail. It's not the northern borealis, and they're totally different. And then in the middle of Maine, it's like they overlap and they're a little bigger. But you got to get up. You got to get where they live. You know.
Right. If we happen to shoot a 200-pounder where we are, it'd be the equivalent of you guys shooting a 240 or 250. They're rare to get up in that 250, 260 range.
Yeah.
That's our 200-pounder. We're 170, 180 is more what you guys call the 200-pounder.
Is that basically the way it's always been, Jim? Like even years ago when there was a lot of deer?
Yeah, pretty much. And I'll tell you one thing. Probably a lot of you guys know Randy Flannery. Well, Randy come up with a thing to me about, maybe 8 or 10 years ago when I met him, and he says there's a line that goes all the way across from the Atlantic to the Pacific. They call it the snake line. And that line zigzags back and forth all the way across the country. And he said the reason they call it the snake line, because there's no poisonous snakes above that line, but down below there is some poisonous snakes. And so what happens is the deer that live up in that upper part, that northern part, they're heavier. The ones that live in the southern part are smaller deer, and they just don't get as big. Now every once in a while we hear one, at least where I hunt, that goes 200 pounds. Most of the time 170, 180, 190 maybe. But the ones, even Tupper Lake, which is only about 20 miles north of where we are, in their contest every year they have a deer that dresses 220 or 230. So that line must run right through New York State somewhere, and probably part of Maine.
There's something, it's called Bergman's Law, and it has to do with any warm-blooded animal. The farther north you go, the bigger the body size is. That's essential. The subspecies matters a lot, the food they have matters a lot, but Bergman's Law says that the further north you go, the more body mass you have, which what that does is it gives you less surface area on your body. So you have more mass to make heat, to keep your body warm, but less surface area proportionate to that mass to lose body heat. And that's not only with deer, but all animals.
Yeah, that's the law or the rule. And then what happens is if they don't have the body mass, those genetically inferior ones don't make the winter and they die. It's only the strong, bigger ones that carry the gene pool on. That's how it works with all those animals. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you even go farther north, get into Saskatchewan and places like that, they tip the scales at 300. Not that Maine doesn't, but it's a little more.
Yeah, well, they get even colder weather. When you get out in that west, it's kind of strange because they get their cold weather early, like Ontario did. You get 40 below, the beginning of December, regular, But then on the other end of it, by March, it's 70 sometimes. You know what I mean? Their winter is earlier but shorter. But I think because of all that cold, and they have less snow out there, they just got to survive the cold. So same thing. They just evolved to be a heavier deer,
Right. And I'm happy where we're at. I don't got to drag out them heavy ones. I'm good.
I have a short story, Hal, if I could tell it.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
About tracking, and actually we were all here talking about tracking, but anyways, this is probably around 20 years ago. I was coming up for an area that we attended in. It was over the top of a mountain and down the other side. And it had to be 150, 200 yards ahead of me, and I just saw a flash of something. I said, golly, what the heck is that? I said, was that a bird or was that a deer? I get down and here's this big buck track. So it was all splayed out like that. I said, holy smokes. I scared that son of a gun. I said, well, I'll track him a little ways. And I tracked him a little ways and I went into a swamp. I said, that deer probably went through the swamp and out the other side because it was small. So anyways, I said, I'll go around it. I went all the way around the swamp. One other track coming in, that was all, and it was his track. So I get all the way around to where I started, and I said, golly, he must be didn't come out yet. So I go all the way back, all the way around the thing. I come back around, get back there, and I said, they didn't go through there. He's got to be still be in there. So I started sneaking along. It was one of those days Joe talked about where it was so quiet. You could sneak along, you could step and not hardly make a sound. Well, I'm easing along there, nice looking every place I can see, and it's thick in there. All of a sudden I come to a spot, trust me, it's closer from you or to me. It was like half the distance. I look and there's a buck laying there with his head back like a cow sleeps. His head was laying right back on his shoulder like that. Well, naturally, I got my gun right in my hand. I put the safe off, and he heard that click, and he was up in one bound. But I shot right from that, boom, like that. Anyways, the deer bounded off. I shot 3 more times. I had a semi-automatic, a 44. Shot 3 more times and followed the track. The deer didn't go probably 100 yards, and he lay there dead. I started looking him over. The only shot I hit him with was the one I shot from the hip. The other 3 shots I missed. Well, it was a nice 8-pointer, just 180 pounds.
Yeah, only takes one.
Even if it's from the hip, right?
That's
Joe, what did you tell him about what your dad said? Why he's shooting that?
Yeah, I used to go practice. I like to practice because I'm a lousy shot, even though my shots are up close. And I'd go down. We got a sand pit, and I'd tell my dad, I'm going to go shoot at rolling tires. So we'd take the rim out, put a cardboard on there, just screw it on, and somebody roll it down, and you shoot at it. I want to tell you guys, if you've never tried it, that's a humbling event. You've got no trees. He's not moving that fast. You're not that excited. So you think, I'm going to just unplug that tire like nothing. First round, I'd shoot 5 times, go down there and think, you guys switched the tire. There's no holes in it. You had to switch the tire. No, but then you get better and better at it. My dad would give me a hard time. He says, one good shot's better than all them fast shots you got. I said, Dad, you're right. But my one good shot's my 4th one. So I got to get rid of them first 3 as fast as I can. But I think what it does for me more than anything, and now if I don't have somebody to roll the tire for me, I'll put a shoe box or a boot box out 60 yards and I'll shoot at it as fast as I can and still aim a little bit. Well, my theory is if you're going to try this, the thing that you're doing is you're speeding up your reaction. So if you see the buck, and rather than the buck taking off on you, which this has happened to me a lot, especially in the younger years, you think, oh, there goes the buck. Oh, and he's gone, and you look at your gun. Why are you even carrying it? You never even thought about shooting. You just watched this deer run away. And Hal is one of the best and quickest snap shooters I've ever seen. But if you want to get good at it, put a box up and shoot at it as fast as you can. And what I tell guys is if you hit it 4 times, you didn't shoot at it fast enough. I want to see you shoot at it so fast you've missed it a couple of times. Now you're getting your speed up. Now, once you get your speed up, now start to aim. So now when a buck goes out, I shoot, and then I think to myself, did I hit him? It's not a thought process. It's just immediate reaction. So you get the shot out. And as Jim always says, you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So it's a good way to practice. You do it alone. And some guys are going to say, well, ammunition's pretty expensive. Yeah, well, we don't want to add up what this whitetail thing cost us. So get that right. I mean, it's worth doing. Try it.
Don't get the meat per pound, right?
No, don't add it up by the hour. This is a little bit of an expensive sport.
Yeah.
But it's worth doing, guys. Try it. If you go home and you put your bench or your gun on the bench and you cover your 100-yard shots with a $50 and you're all proud, all you did was make sure the gun shoots good. That doesn't make you shoot good. And I've yet to see a shooting bench in the woods. They're pretty rare, especially when you're walking. So.
Yeah. Most people get too prepared. They watch too many of the tree stand videos where you got plenty of time, but in the woods, a deer can disappear pretty quickly in the woods, right? One step sometimes, even if they're not running, they can disappear in a hurry. So you got to shoot quick, and you also got to learn your shot placement in your angles, because if you don't know that ahead of time, you're not going to know where to aim, right? You got to, if he's quartering away or towards you or straight away, whatever, you got to have it in your mind where your shot is going to be ahead of time. So you're not thinking, oh, gee, where should I shoot? Where should I shoot? It's too late. It's gone.
Yeah, and the rolling tires won't teach you all of that, but it will teach you to swing on it, and it will teach you to lead it. It'll teach you those things. But the idea that you can have a rolling tire 35 yards from you going down a smooth driveway and you're going to miss it sounds ludicrous, but I want to tell you, it's a humbling event. You will miss that tire a lot.
One thing you want to try, too, when you're doing that is wear the coat you're going to hunt with, wear the gloves you're going to hunt with. And we were shooting tires one time, and I had the gloves I was going to wear hunting, and I had them on, and I went to work the action the first time. My hand slipped right off the pump. So I'm not wearing them gloves anymore. They didn't have good grip. Didn't realize it.
It gets rid of a lot of the kinks that you got that you don't know about. It seems like every time, and every year it happens to me, I'll run the first clip through, and something will go wrong. The gun will jam. Clip wasn't in all the way. I didn't get the 3rd shot off. Something messes up, and by the 4th or 5th clip, everything seems to be working a little smoother. It's coming up, and we don't stand there at the ready. We got the gun down, we're facing the other way, and they roll the tire. And then, of course, I'll yell out, there he goes, get him, get him, get him. And you got to turn around and pick it up and shoot him. And, that tire sometimes is pretty safe. And, of course, if you hit the tire, that's a superficial wound. You got to be in the cardboard.
Yeah. I tell people before you even get to the tire stage, learn, you got to do this in baby steps. Learn to shoot quick before you're trying to shoot quick at a tire. If you just, the best way is to, I like to use balloons because you immediately know if you hit them, you know. And if you can you blow a balloon up to like 6 inches and staple it on a plywood or a cardboard downrange, 50 yards, whatever, and just practice bringing your gun up, getting the safety off, and firing a quick shot. That's the first step. The first step isn't trying to shoot running deer. It's being able to get a shot off in a split second. So start down, bring it up, you know, get the safety off as you come up, and the split second, your bead or crosshair hits the balloon, pull the trigger, and see what happens. Don't empty your gun. Put your gun back down, take the safety off, and do it again. If you keep doing that, that's going to get your reaction time. What Joe was talking about, when you jump a buck and you see him go, that takes care of that. That gets you prepared to get your gun moving. Because you want to get your gun going. You see a buck, you want to get your gun going, and before you wait to see if it's the one you're after or even it is a buck. When you see a deer going, you want to start up with your gun, because if you wait, oh yeah, that's the buck, and then it's too late. He's gone.
Yeah.
So you just up one shot, and once you get that where you can hit that balloon, say, every time, then you can go up, bring it up, and then then you work with your action, whether you got a pump, a lever, whatever you got for an action, bring it up, shoot one balloon, just go boom, 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 and empty your gun and just shoot different balloons stationary. Once you get that, then move on to the tires.
Oh, yeah, that is a great point. But I will say another trick that I do helps out a lot, and it will put you in perspective on where you are with this quick shooting. Is when you're going through the woods, especially up here in Maine where you have more grouse, I try to get every grouse I flush in the sights. And I'll tell you, that's a humbling event as well. Every once in a while, I actually get one in the sights, whether it's the bead or the crosshairs, and I think, you know, I might have been able to kill that one. That's about 1 out of every 10. But you never know when it's going to happen. So when that grouse goes out, when you guys are walking around, even if you're going to your stand, try to get him in your sights. You're getting better at getting your gun up to your shoulder, a little muscle memory going on there.
I try to do that even if I'm not hunting. Walking through the woods and a grouse jumps up, you slap leather, like Jim will say it. But, you know, instead of sticking your head out looking for it, you know, pull up like you're shooting a gun. I try to do that.
You know, just thinking about that, Steve, was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago that you put Tommy Pawinski on that track?
I think 3 seasons ago.
3 seasons ago. Steve took one of the friends that's in our booth down there and took him out and was just going to try to find a deer track for him and found one. And he said, "This is a nice buck. Go ahead, take this." So Tommy starts following the deer and ends up jumping a deer out. And he was up and on that deer before it made 4 bounds and ended up killing it. But he's a heck of a wing shot. He shoots a lot of ducks, a lot of geese, and the guy's a good wing shot. I said, if it was me, I never would have touched that deer. I never would have got it. But just the idea of practicing, even if it's shooting at real game like birds, whatever, it helps an awful lot.
Any shooting you do, it's not going to hurt you.
It's kind of similar to what Hal said, but I use clay pigeons, and I'll go to a pit and just put them all over, and you can do that progression like a deer or something. Yep. So you know if you hit it, and you don't have to blow the balloons up and tie
Make
it
it fun. Put a little tannerite out there.
Yeah, anything you can do to practice is probably get you more success quicker. One of the best things that you can do. We put too much time in to not do that little bit of extra practice and do it alone. By the time you get your buddies together, everybody's so busy these days. Great if you can, but don't make that excuse, I had nobody to do it with. Go do it on your own, and you're going to learn a lot about your gun. A real lot. I can remember taking my bolt action down there, and it would jam, or the neck wasn't clean on the chamber and different things, and I thought, God, I hated the one to have a 10-pointer jump up in front of me, or I shoot once at it and he runs 4 bounds, stops and looks back, and I can't get the gun reloaded. So I mean, it's vitally important.
The other thing too is you could use a pump 22 if you're using a pump where you're not shooting 30-06. You're not getting the recoil obviously, but it's still good practice and isn't quite as expensive.
Yeah, and I think that is a great point. There's no reason to not do it with a 22, unless you don't have one. But
it's funny, even talking about practicing, I found out years and years ago, we used to do a lot of archery shooting. We'd shoot even after dark, set a target up and put a light on the target and shoot at it. Even shooting archery and doing a lot of it would get me in tune for shooting my rifle. Just shooting archery.
Yeah, anything to help you with the follow through. You know, it was frustrating when I was young and I'd see a buck go out and I never fired the gun. You don't even stand a chance. And it was only because I wasn't practiced up. You know, you got to have that muscle memory. It can't be a thought process. I can stand here and tell you right now, and I know if I don't shoot the gun, I can stand here and say, well, I'm going to shoot right at him. I'm not going to. And the next year that it goes out, if I don't practice, I'll be like, and he'll be gone, and I never fired the gun. It's got to come natural. It's got to be an instinct. It's got to be muscle memory. You got to practice it.
Joe, you sure you don't get the fever a little bit?
I'm pretty sure I do. Yeah. It's all fun.
Yeah, well, good conversation, guys.
Yeah, you know, I got to put a shout out to Pat for putting this together. We weren't here last year. The weather's great this year, obviously, great turnout, but what a great event. You know, I really think that this is a heck of a show.
Yeah, it's going good. So, anyways, before we wrap it up, I got to do the housekeeping stuff. And I always say, you know, support our sponsors. That's what keeps us going. And people, we've been getting the questions about our wool again, so I'll put a plug for that. It'll be ready. We were supposed to have jackets for here, but we're at the whims of the stitcher again. And so, but we'll have them in a couple of weeks now for sure. They're already being made. So we're going to take pre-orders here. And for the longer sleeve ones, and the pants will be right behind it. So anyways, we'll have everything you need if you want it well before deer season. Like by September, we'll have the pants, jackets. We got packs now and stuff like that. And so anyways, anything else, Joe? That's about it.
Hal, thanks for having us. I really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it. Thank you
thanks
for
coming down. Well, if Hal's plugging, we're plugging too. We're down at there. We got a seminar coming on at noon.
Yeah.
Talk a lot about track, and I promise you it'll go quick. So if you can stop down and see us down at the big building. Yeah,
buy a book. I was telling people yesterday in my talk that seems like, especially the younger people nowadays, they don't like to read. You know, they want to get everything quickly on the internet or the YouTube, you know, visual. But there's nothing like having a book you can pick up and refer back to and get the information that way, because you're never going to remember it all just watching stuff. So
even to help get the adrenaline going just with the pictures.
Oh, yeah.
It's just fun to do.
Yeah. Well, okay then.
We're all set, Chris?
Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Thank you,
everyone.
All right.
Till next time, good luck on the trail.
Hi, everyone. Team member Mark Sheeran here. I've been helping people solve their addictions for the last 34 years. In 2017, we published the revolutionary non-12-step book, The Freedom Model for Addictions. If you'd like a free paperback copy sent directly to you, go to freebook.freedommodel.org. That's freebook.freedommodel.org. All right, take care.
Hey guys, Joe here. Wanted to take a few minutes to talk about Lake Parlin Lodge. We're a four-season lodge located just south of Jackman. We've got cabins, lodge rooms, mini lodge. We're a big snowmobile destination in the winter, full restaurant, bar, all the amenities that you need for your trip. Open obviously through the summer, right on the lake. Kayaks, canoes, all included with the cabin. We also do a lot of weddings, so if you're looking for a destination wedding, we can do a wedding up to 200 people. And, of course, we've got our hunting season, moose season, deer season. So check us out. We're at lakeparlinlodge.com.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Till next time, good luck on the trail.